I led or played a key part in over 70 undercover child rescue missions.
Yeah.
And in that, I saw the darkest that humanity has to offer.
Paul Hutchinson, author of The Sound of Freedom, reveals the gripping true stories behind his mission to rescue thousands of trafficked children.
When I'm 95 years old and I look back on my life and I say I built this multi-billion-dollar company or I helped rescue this many children, which one of them matters? This was the first time that I saw what I knew was a trafficked child. I'm looking eye level at her and I could see into her soul. All I could see was fear. And I made a commitment at that moment to myself, to God, to that child, that I would dedicate my life to eradicating that evil.
I have 5 kids, and as you know, you would die for your kids. You would do anything for them.
Yeah.
And the fact that you're willing to die for kids you don't even know tells a lot about your character. All right, so Paul, tell me, you wrote this book. So grab that book, Sound of Freedom, which is true stories that inspired the film Sound of Freedom, the movie. They don't want to know, like, what caused you to write this book, and who did you write it for?
I wrote this for the millions of parents who leave the movie Sound of Freedom and they're like, okay, I want to do something about trafficking. And I tell them the worst thing you can do is go to Mexico and try to go undercover. You're gonna get arrested. You're probably gonna get shot.
Could be trouble.
Right.
Yeah.
The best thing you can do is go home and hug your kids.
Okay.
And people are like, oh, how does that help? The book goes through helping parents understand where the challenges come from, how to identify when there's behavior changes in your kids, where maybe there's something going on with the uncle, maybe there's something going on with the babysitter, maybe there's something going on online that they're not aware of. And so the situational awareness tools, I led or played a key part in over 70 undercover child rescue missions. And in that, I saw the darkest that humanity has to offer. Yeah. But in that, I also recognize what needs to happen to fix this. Not only to rescue the kids, but how do we keep kids out of that situation in the first place? And beyond that, the last section of the book, we go through the emotional transformation that I went through in this fight against child trafficking and some of the rescue missions. But the last part is all about liberating humanity. What do we need to do as humanity to elevate global consciousness, to change how we connect with each other, to root it out completely so we can truly eradicate child trafficking.
And listen, like, if you're a sales professional or a coach or an entrepreneur or a business owner, we're going to talk about sales and persuasion here with how he did, you got to be pretty persuasive, Paul, right? When you're going undercover, like, with these people to get in the group to really network and stuff. So make sure you listen to this. Is really important to you, because you've got a family, you've got kids, maybe you don't have kids yet, you want to have kids, you want to learn this stuff. I know it's a little bit outside of sales, but this is really important for you, this podcast we're going to go through here. So you had this $70 billion, I know you retired, you had a $20 billion investment fund, now it's $70 billion, you still have ownership in and stuff. A lot of people would be like, dude, why would you want to get into human trafficking, to see all this stuff? Because a lot of people put the blinders on, because it's kind of dark, right? When you don't want to think that it's happening, but it does. What motivated you? What was behind the motivation to get into this after you really didn't need to do anything after you retired?
What's funny is how so many of my investors in the fund who were, billionaire status or close to it, said, Paul, what do you, I mean, you're set. You could sell out today, buy an island, be happy the rest of your life. Why would you put your life in danger like this? In fact, I remember on the very first time that I had received a phone call from the Attorney General, who introduced me to some operators who had invited me to not only help to fund some rescue missions, but more importantly, in terms of my transformation, invited me to come and play a role. I'd built a very successful real estate company. In this situation, just a high level overview, the traffickers had this sick plan of building this resort that they could sell their victims to wealthy Americans.
Wow.
And they needed some millions of dollars to do it. The undercover operators needed somebody who could effectively negotiate that deal with them.
Okay,
and
that's
the
where they
Navy SEALs
brought you
couldn't
in.
do it. You know,
Yeah.
he says, I
Yeah.
need, these guys will see through fake money all day long. I need somebody who can very comfortably wear a $50,000 watch and
Yeah.
you know, really nice
Because they
suit.
already do it. Yeah.
Exactly.
It's normal.
Exactly. And so that's the reason I was brought into it. But I remember my business partner, John Pennington, and I are the co-founders of Bridge Investment Group. And John called me like an hour afterwards. He goes, Paul, I heard about what you're doing. He says, you've agreed to go undercover as a wealthy investor to Colombia to meet traffickers?
By yourself, no bodyguards.
Exactly. I mean, there are already Navy SEALs there and Green Berets that were going to pick me up. But he said, have you thought this through?
Yeah.
He said,
you're going to be on your own there.
Exactly.
Like, you're not going to have the Navy SEAls right next to you.
Exactly. He says, have you thought this through? He says, this is super dangerous. He said, you've literally spent your life building this empire. You know, at one point, Jeremy, I had 2 helicopters. I had a house with 10 bathrooms, 8 private suites, right? 3 kitchens.
Yeah.
Right. I had a basketball court in my basement. I mean, I was set. I had cars, I had planes. And so he said, why would you do this? And I said, John, tell me this. I said, if I was doing something else dangerous, if I was climbing Everest tomorrow, you and I would have the same conversation. He said, yeah, we probably would.
Yeah.
I said, and when I'm 95 years old and I look back on my life and I say, I climbed this mountain, or I built this multi-billion-dollar company, or I made this kind of an impact. I helped rescue this many children from the darkest thing imaginable. Which one of them matters at all?
Well, which matters in the eyes of God, you know, because in the day, we all gonna be accountable to our Maker and look him in the eyes to see what we did with the blessings he gave you.
So true. You know, I always say that hell is when the man I am comes face to face with the man I could have become. Yeah. You know, and everything that I had created, I didn't create. They were all blessings. They were all divine. The statistical probability of me being where I am is 0. You know, how do you become a partner, let alone a founder of a multi-billion-dollar investment firm? You're not a University of Utah dropout. Yeah. Right? It doesn't happen. The only way I can understand it is divine providence. Yeah. And in doing so, I feel like it's my responsibility to use those connections, that money, that whatever it is, to create good in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's what it's all about, because you didn't have to do anything. You just kick back and nobody would have been upset at you, but it's the people like you that actually change things in the world, you know, because they have the resources and they want to do it. You're in these undercover missions. What was the first one you went on? Or can you explain a little bit about that without explaining everything?
Yeah, well, I can explain everything. Yeah. I'm not undercover anymore.
Okay.
I mean, I've of the 70 missions that I've been in places where we have guns to our head. We've had times where we've had dirty police officers arrest us that were working with the traffickers. I mean,
what was the very first one you went on?
The very first one was Colombia. If people have seen the movie Sound of Freedom, halfway through when Jim Caviezel was trying to figure out how to make all this work, and he needed a wealthy playboy who could fund the mission and play the role. So that part was Pablo Delgado. That was me in real life, right? Yeah. And that was played by Eduardo Verástegui, the producer of Sound of Freedom. I'm the primary investor and executive producer behind the movie. Technically, we took 8 different rescue missions and put them all together into one storyline, many different operators, and put them together with just a handful of characters. Sure. You know, Jim Caviezel is our A-list character. We needed to put a lot of credibility there, although there was a lot of other operations and people involved with some of those missions. And so my very first one was in Colombia. I had never been there before. So what
happens? You just get dropped off at the airport? No, somebody picks you up? Like, so what happens?
I'm in my sales job, right? I'm in Atlanta, Georgia. Okay. At a 3rd generation multi-billionaire investment conference, right? Yeah. All these big money guys.
Yeah, and old money.
And I had already funded some stuff for some different charity foundations. And I get a call from one of the operators. And he's like, Paul, he says, we found over 100 kids down here and I need your help. You know, and ego me is like, oh, how much do you need? You know? He said, well, I need you. Can you be in Colombia in 2 days?
Yeah.
I'm like, well, I'm in Atlanta. I live in Utah. I don't even have time to run home. I
Yeah.
said, what do you need? And he explained the whole situation of the guy that needed the investor, whatever. He says, the plan is he needs to think that you're willing to fund his project under one condition. You're going to have a party with a bunch of your buddies. And if he brings all of his existing inventory, he says, we have to get him to call all the other traffickers, get them to bring all the kids to the same place at the same time so that we can do the sting.
Yeah.
He said, the only way we're going to do that is if he thinks that the only way that you're going to fund his project is if he pulls everybody together.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so, I'm like, well, what do I wear? He's like, well, come as a wealthy playboy. And I look down, I've got $2,000 cufflinks on, right?
Sure.
I've got a suit that costs more than my first car.
Yeah.
And
You're
I'm
I should qualify.
I'm like, I got the outfit. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so he said, we're going to have some Navy SEALs, Green Berets pick you up at the airport in Cartagena. You just have to get here. So from Atlanta, I'm looking at the flights. Okay, there's a flight into Bogota that lay over into Atlanta, into Cartagena. So I jump on that one. I go down there. Now, I'd never been to Colombia before.
Yeah.
Now, back in the 80s, Pablo Escobar was paying $200 to have police officers and political guys knocked off, right? So I thought, well, if I'm worth more than $200, I could be a target, right?
Yeah.
But I was told to dress as that wealthy guy. So he says, you never know who's on the plane or whatever else. So you dress the part.
You
I'm like,
dress
okay.
the part. Okay.
So I'm dressed in I've got my Ray-Ban sunglasses. I got my Gucci bag. I've got my $50,000 Breitling watch. Right. And so I get down there and I'm Bogota. There's a layover that got canceled. I'm like, shoot. So I called him. I says, bros, I have to come in tomorrow morning. They says, that's okay. The meeting with the traffickers is tomorrow. Just get a hotel there. So I look and I'm just like, okay, there's a Marriott here. So I go out front. Now, rule number 1, don't show up in a third world country dressed like a target.
Yeah.
Hey guys, Jeremy Miner here. A lot of you guys keep asking me really good questions in the comments on how to sell more. So the easiest way to actually get a hold of me is to actually text me way faster. So 480-418-6755. So text me at 480-418-6755, because here's the deal. I started this sales training company to help you finally master sales and persuasion once and for all, which is, I know what you want to do. So text me and then let's get back to the show.
Rule number 2, at 11 o'clock at night, don't go get a random guy with a sign saying, I'll take you somewhere. Okay, I must have been hired, I don't know. But instead of the regular taxi line, guys like, hey, you need a ride? I'm like, yeah, I need a ride in Marriott. Yeah,
Wow.
I get in this car and we're driving and I'm texting these guys and stuff, so I'm going to be late. And I see the Marriott go in the freeway. I'm like, okay, maybe he's taking the next exit.
Yeah.
1 exit, 2 exit, 3. I'm saying, Marriott aquí. He goes, no, hotel. I'm like, no, Marriott. He's a hotel. I'm like, crap, how do I? And so then he takes this exit, this dark area of town.
Okay.
Okay. Pulls in front of this hotel, this motel, this, like, you can rent it by the hour, right? Prostitutes, drug dealers, bunch of thugs. And he goes, hotel. I'm like, no, Marriott. He's like, no, hotel. I said, no, Marriott. He goes, hotel. I'm like, shit, I knew,
Yeah.
I over the next 10 years doing these undercover works, I got good at listening to that voice of truth, that God guidance that was there.
Yeah.
And usually it's kind of quiet.
Mm-hmm.
At that time, it wasn't quiet. It was loud. It was like, Paul, do not get out of the car.
This is dangerous.
Right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, crap, what do I do? Well, I had donated a bunch of money to the Unified Police Department. And I helped them buy like a bulletproof car and some other things.
Sure.
And as part of it, they gave me a badge.
Okay.
It was an honorary colonel.
You had it with you.
I had it with me. It was in the
Oh,
bag.
boy. That's
so,
good.
So I get in the bag. I pull this badge out and I go, Policia, Marriott, ahora, police, Marriott, now, right? He's like, oh, so he turns around. I thought, maybe John was right. Maybe I should have thought through this. Right?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. That didn't start off. So you get into the hotel. What happened after that?
Well, the next morning I fly to Cartagena. I get picked up by these Navy SEALs, literally bulletproof, level 4 heavy duty bulletproof vehicle. I'm like,
Right.
okay.
Yeah.
And they take me to this restaurant. This restaurant's got already the former undercover guys, some former CIA guys and former CTI guys, some guys from Colombia.
Yeah.
And boom, the traffickers are looking at this scene. These Navy SEALs get out of the car. They're looking around. They're my real bodyguards and my show bodyguards, right?
Sure.
These guys have to think that I've got the money to do this. Of course, I'd
Okay.
have
So
some
they
bodyguards.
think they're just your bodyguards.
Yeah, exactly. So they look around, they take me up, and I'm thinking, okay, traffickers, they're gonna have tattoos and earrings, and
Yeah.
bro,
That's what you'd think.
the first trafficker I met was a Mexican version of me.
That's crazy.
He was a young, clean-cut businessman. I'm like,
Wow.
he's not
Okay.
a trafficker, right? And there was a beautiful woman. She had a modeling agency. I'm like, but sitting down talking to him, here's something interesting. And this is part of my transformation.
Yeah.
I realized over the next 10 years of doing this work that the common thread with the perpetrators and the traffickers, common thread wasn't earrings and tattoos and dreadlocks.
Yeah.
The common thread was arrogance and greed and lust.
What do you feel causes a human being to even want to do something like that?
Well, that's the point, is that over time, I had to look in the mirror myself and say, okay, Paul, you're not doing anything illegal. You're definitely, you're helping kids. You're not hurting kids in any way. But I was in my second marriage, headed for a divorce. I had lost my relationship with God. I was having parties every other weekend in my basketball court in my basement with half-dressed girls and NBA players. And I had to look in the mirror myself and say, Paul, you're fighting the greatest evil on earth. But the common thread with these guys was arrogance, greed, and lust. And how has arrogance, greed, and lust showed up in your life? You know, I didn't have any childhood trauma, but I had myself created trauma. I'd created a multi-billion-dollar company at a very young age. And that combined with a loss of a connection with God and some moral principles, I had to take a real solid look at the man in the mirror. One of my favorite stories is the one where, a man's sitting on a couch and he's reading his newspaper, and his little boy comes in. He says, Daddy, I want to read. I want to play baseball. He's like, oh, I'm reading the newspaper. No, okay. So he comes back a little bit. Daddy, it's a beautiful day outside. Can we play base? So he turns the page, and there's a map of the world.
Yeah.
He tears out this map, tears it up a little piece of paper, throws it on the floor. He says, son, you need to learn your geography. You go get some tape together every country exactly where it needs to be. And as soon as you do that, then I'll go play baseball with you. Thinking it's going to take a couple hours, this little boy comes back in 5 minutes and has it all taped together. And his dad's like, what did you do? How'd you figure that out? The little boy turns it over. He says, well, there's a picture of a man on the other side. I just put the man together and the whole world came together. And that's really the answer to the riddle. After 10 years of undercover work, after 70 missions, I recognized that the only way that we're going to, it's not just pulling these kids out of hell. It's pulling the hell out of humanity.
Yeah, because what would literally cause a human being to want to sell a child, or anybody for that matter?
Well,
especially
and
a child.
I recognize this too.
Insane.
And this is going to piss some people off. I'm just going to go there. Okay. Now, when I say this next part, don't get me wrong. I am not a sympathizer in any way of anybody who hurts a child. I've literally put my life in danger hundreds of times to ensure that their innocence. However, I recognized over the years that almost every one of the traffickers were trafficked themselves as children.
Okay. So it's just
almost every one of the perpetrators.
It's like abuse.
Yeah. But
Keep doing
that's
it.
not an excuse.
Sure.
The majority of my undercover operators were guys who abused themselves as kids too.
You can choose.
You can make a choice every single day to take that negativity and contribute to
I mean,
more negativity or contribute to good.
Look at this lady. I'm going to describe her. You probably know who she is. African-American lady. She was raped at the age of 13. I think had a stillborn child, put into like an orphanage. She's African-American, grew up in the South in the 60s. Who are we talking about? She's now a billionaire.
Yeah.
Oprah Winfrey.
Yeah.
What's the chances that person in those circumstances becomes Oprah freaking Winfrey?
No, I'm just gonna throw it out on live TV right here.
Yeah,
I don't think she's as clean as we think.
Oh, sure. Okay, I'm just
because
saying
of the fact that for and this is the same thing with me, right? Massive success combined with unhealed trauma can create some additional challenges. So it's not just, okay, I overcame these things and now I became incredibly successful. This is where I had to take a look in the mirror. Yes, I had created massive success regardless of what happened in my past. Some of my operators, I had one of my operators, Andy. Andy had significant childhood trauma, similar to what a lot of these traffickers had gone through. Yet he was now making $1 million a week in his company. So massive success.
It's
but
what you choose
both of
to
us
do.
were still broken.
Yeah. It's what you choose to do with it. Like everybody goes through trials and tribulations in some form or another. There's always something you're going through. And all it, like Tony Robbins says is best, is just, life doesn't happen to you, it happens for you, but it's what you do. It's like it's how you choose when those trials happen or tribulations. You can choose to be a victim and go the other way, right? Exactly. Or you can choose to do something good with it to impact the world. Exactly. It's just a choice at the end of the day.
Exactly. It is, So back to the whole, traffickers being trafficked and perpetrators being I realized, and again, this will piss some people off, but I'm going to go here, okay? I realized that if I'm ever judging another human being, whether it's somebody who cut me off on the freeway, whether it's for somebody who stole $1 million from me, my company, whatever it is, whether it's somebody who sold me a child, okay? If I'm ever judging another human being, there's a 100% chance, not an 80, 90, a 100% chance that I don't have all the facts. I don't know if that guy cutting me off on the freeway, I don't know if his wife's in the hospital. Yeah. And he might just be an asshole, right? Yeah. Now, but even then, he might be an asshole because he was abused by his father. There's so many things that I don't know about that. Now, he still needs to get pulled over and given a ticket so he doesn't put people's lives in danger. Yeah. That trafficker, he still needs to go to prison so he doesn't hurt any other kids. However, from a judgment standpoint, I don't know. I don't know if he was likely raped as a kid. Yeah. He probably had 1,000 bad things that happened and 1,000 bad decisions that he made that got him to that point. Yeah. Again, it doesn't justify it. But if a rat's in my kitchen, I still need to remove the rat so it doesn't create disease, but I don't have to do it with hatred energy. I can do it with compassion, saying, okay, you're done here. Yeah. You might come back in another life as not a rat.
Right, yeah.
It's in my kitchen.
Let's do a redo. You got a lot of lessons to learn,
but I don't have to have that negative
100%. It doesn't help you. So you get out of the car, you got the bodyguards there, right? What happened next?
I walk upstairs and I meet these people who didn't look like traffickers. I
like,
kiss the girl on the cheek and I shake the hand of this guy, sit down, start negotiating this deal. Yeah. And I told him, listen, I heard that you're interested in some funding for a project.
This is so I want to stop here for a second, because at this point, I always say, we're a very large sales training company. You're an actor or actress always on stage in a play that never ends. Yeah. So it's not, just because you're wealthy and everything, you walk up here, a lot of people would be really freaking nervous and would give it away right there because they can read your tonality. Our brains recognizes patterns, their brains are recognizing you act a little bit awkward or something's off. You might be a dead man. So how did you get in this state where you just acted like this was normal and you're persuasive? Like, how did you influence there?
What's interesting there is that the best undercover operators we worked with over the next 10 years were guys like Jimmy Rex, very, very successful in real estate sales, right? Myself, Andy, others. The Navy SEALs, Green Berets that were used to, night vision goggles and a sniper on the roof, they sucked undercover because they didn't know how to read the energy. They didn't know how to read the communication.
Body language, tonality.
Exactly. So, this is one of the reasons I was recruited. I'm not going to go the whole story, but a year before, I go into this in the Sound of Freedom in a meeting with a CIA recruiter, had said, Paul, he says, I've been watching you for the last few days. I think your country could use your talents. And I'm like, well, what talents are those? And this is what he was referring to. Yeah. He says, your ability to break down that barrier of communication and become best friends with a billionaire, a bum on the street, a runway model is a very unique talent. Yeah.
Because you get killed if you don't.
Exactly. I building the fund, I could walk into a room, look around, I could identify the guy with the real money, and I was his best friend within 15 minutes. Yeah. Right. I knew how to ask the right questions. I had read the right books. It was all life is sales. Whether you're building a company, whether you're building a family, whatever it is, your ability to effectively communicate your ideas to the other person and have them think that it's their idea rather than yours.
It's self-persuasion.
Exactly.
Everybody's in sales. Even if you don't get paid a commission, you're still trying to persuade, convince, you're trying to move others to your way of thinking. Yeah. So you walk in, how did you move them to buy it?
First of all is mirroring. Mirroring is everything. I'm sitting here at this chair and I'm like this. I'm casually, I'm in your same energy.
Sure.
Where, I even looked online beforehand and tried to figure out how buttoned up I should be, how casual, because the mirroring in our conversation, in our tonality, in how we're sitting, everything else is super important. So I came in, I saw that they were all more casual, although I had my super expensive suit suit on. I
Yeah.
took that off.
Took
I
the
unbuttoned a
coat
little
off,
bit,
yeah.
so I casualed down just immediately, right? And again, questions are the answers. I'm
Yeah.
not pitching me. I'm asking them, and the more I ask them to tell me what's going on and appear truly interested in what's going
Yeah,
on
you're
now.
getting them to qualify to you rather than you qualifying to them.
Exactly.
Yeah, so
Exactly.
you're getting them to pull you in.
Exactly.
Okay.
So they're pitching everything to me. All I had to do was show up and mirror.
Yeah.
They're pitching to me, and then halfway through this meeting, we're sitting there, and I'm saying, yeah, I'm just show me what you got. What are you thinking here? And it was super casual. It was just like any other business conversation in the beginning, other than the fact that when they start talking about their business plan.
Yeah.
When the product is children.
Yeah.
Now the conversation gets dark.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I was trying to stay away from that, just talking about the high level numbers, just because this was my first time there. And this was super heavy.
Super heavy.
Yeah. But halfway through, one of the traffickers, he goes, Pablo, he says, I have a gift for you. I said, really, what's your gift? And he hands me his phone, and he has a picture of a little girl, an 11-year-old girl. He said, this is Princess. Now, in the movie Sound of Freedom, my character says, I don't want to go, unless the government's involved or whatever. And it wasn't until Jim Caviezel gives this picture of this little girl to my driver.
Yeah.
And I look at this picture, and he says, don't do it for the 50, do it for the 1, sold at 11, whatever. And that's when I changed my mind, decided to go. In real life, I was already there.
Yeah.
I'm sitting there face to face with the
You're right there.
darkest conversation. But him showing me that picture, now this was the first time that I saw what I knew was a trafficked child.
This is like
offering
real.
it to me,
Yeah.
And he says, we just took delivery of some. She's a 0 kilometer mile. I mean, just horrific.
Yeah.
And I realized, wow, if we could get these kids out before they're ever hurt the first time, that would be a miracle. And so this is where I made my move. I'm like, Fuego. I said, you just took delivery. You have more 0 kilometer, and it actually helped me a little bit that they were talking 0 kilometer instead of saying, virgins or whatever else. Right.
Yeah.
It helped me in my emotional state at the time. And he goes, oh no, he says, those ones are too expensive. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, I was already paying this guy $25,000. I'm paying him $500 per child for a minimum of 50 children just for 2 hours in the afternoon. Right. He says, Jefe, which is boss in Spanish. He goes, Jefe, you already paid $25,000. You want to be with these other 0 kilometers. It's going to cost you maybe $2,000, maybe $5,000 for that little one. It's going to cost you maybe $10,000 more. Now, at this point, no acting involved. I was legitimately pissed.
Yeah.
He's talking about these kids like they're commodities.
Yeah.
And
Just a number.
my ego self came right out. I'm like, put my hands on my chest, and I'm like, you don't think I can afford an extra $10,000?
Yeah.
He's like, oh no. And sales is there's posturing always, right?
Sure,
There's an energetic posturing.
Yeah.
If I just kind of let him roll, then it would have lost.
You're
It's
like,
kind of like
you're
you're
raising
fishing
your
for a
status.
marlin.
You're like,
If
hold
you don't
on,
keep
you
the
don't feel
pressure,
like, you're raising your status.
yeah. If I'm not keeping the pressure on there, it's going to lose him anyway. I think this is one of the reasons it went so well. Many of these operations, I'm sitting there. One operation, this trafficker is like, telling me, oh, it's $2,000, $3,000 for this or whatever, and ego me.
Yeah.
Putting a little bit of pressure is actually something that they're used to. They're used to guys that are doing this. And so in this situation, I'm like, you don't think I can afford an extra $10,000?
Yeah. Yeah.
Who do you think I am? I'm
Yeah.
funding an $8 million project for you.
Yeah.
You kidding me?
Yeah.
He's like, oh no, Jefe, no. I said, I want every one. And there's a time in sales where you let them talk, and there's a time in sales where you ask for the sale.
Yeah.
So boom, I said, I want every one of those 0 kilometer miles there. I want every one of them. They damn well better, you don't touch them. You understand? They better be clean when they get there. I don't want anybody touching them between now and then. If they do, the entire deal's off. Do you understand? And then drop that
Power
silence.
frame, yeah.
And he's like, yeah, Jefe, I understand. This stupid smile on his face. So, this was the negotiation there, and it worked really well.
So what happened at that point?
Well, we finished our conversation. I exchanged contact information with him. Over the next 2 weeks, we had operators that met with the U.S. Embassy, the Colombian federal agents, and I kept in touch with one of these traffickers, making sure that he was on track.
Yeah. Okay.
And crazy, I talk about this in the Sound of Freedom book as well. He sends me a text. He's got a nice car, and he sends me a picture of himself with his 3-year-old in the back seat.
Wow. Like he doesn't even
hell?
care. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
And
crazy.
then he sends me a text. He's like, I think that God sent you to me so that I can, buy a Ferrari for her and, and all this other stuff. I'm like,
That's just warped.
I'm thinking,
Yeah.
you're right. God did send me.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm gonna take
And it's
you
so to
out.
make
Yeah.
sure that little girl doesn't end up like so many other traffickers
Exactly.
kids do.
Yeah.
Right. So then, 2 weeks
So
later,
you keep in touch. Yeah.
yeah, we fly back down. The Colombian agents have provided 40 agents for us. Four of them were like our maids and our waiters and our cooks.
Yeah.
They weren't very good cooks, but they're
Yeah,
armed,
sure.
right?
Yeah.
They're not very good salesmen either,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
They weren't very good undercover.
Yeah.
They literally, as cooks, they came out and they brought a big block of cheese with no knives, no forks, no plates, no cut, no anything. I'm like,
Pretty obvious.
pretty obvious you guys suck
Oh my
at
gosh.
this job.
Wow. Okay.
So and then these guys end up bringing it. We had 3 separate cities at the same time.
Mhm.
Cartagena, Colombia is when I was at, because it was a total of 124 children
Wow.
that were rescued that day, and 54 of them were there in
So
Cartagena.
where did they bring him? They brought him into one location
yeah,
for you?
we were at an island.
Okay.
And, you touched on God before, so this is a
Yeah.
beautiful story. So one of my operators
Mhm.
was, he realized that he was manning one of the 2 boats. These boats are the size of school buses,
Yeah.
right? And he realized that the magnitude of the problem when these boats were filled with 54 kids and the traffickers
Yeah.
coming out to this private island that I had rented, right? That
Okay.
Pablo was having this party. I mean, really, the federal agents had put it all together
Yeah.
for us. But he said that halfway out to the island, one of the older kids, recognizing the extreme duress in some of the younger children
Yeah.
that were there, he said he didn't know what they said because the boat engine was going, but he pulled them all together.
Mhm.
They all held hands and offered up a prayer. And little did they know that prayer was already answered.
Already answered.
That there was people waiting there
Mhm.
for their deliverance that had literally risked their lives to put this whole thing together. And, so they unload these kids. We put them in this little separate part of the house, and we're negotiating around this table. We have to, at this point, this is where the conversation gets dark, because we have really dark. We have undercover cameras, and we need them to say on camera
What they're gonna do? and
what they're going to
everything.
do. So they can't
Yeah.
say later, "Oh, I thought it was a pool party." And no,
Yeah.
you know exactly what it was, right?
Yeah.
And then once we had all of that, we ordered tequila.
Yeah.
That was the sign that the waiters are supposed to go in and radio
Mm-hmm.
to the 25 special forces guys are supposed to come in and storm the island. Well, boom. That was supposed to happen within 2 minutes.
Yeah.
It was 5 minutes, 10, 50. It was 45 minutes later before they came. Now, we didn't know anything at the time.
Okay.
We had no idea. All we knew is we just ordered tequila. All the traffickers know is that the tequila order, we're supposed to start the party.
Yeah.
Right?
Where's the tequila?
literally, one guy pulls out the cocaine. One guy goes inside with the kids, and we're sitting there waiting for the for the agents to come and
yeah.
arrest us.
Yeah.
And the kids were crying inside because the guys were trying to bring some of them out. And I'm like, this is a disaster, right?
Yeah.
And so they bring out these 4 virgins,
Okay.
little kids, this 11-year-old boy, these other, one of the girls was the same one he showed me on that picture.
Yeah.
And standing up in front of me as I'm sitting down, just like we are right here, she's standing up. We were almost eye level.
Mm-hmm.
You can imagine this little kid.
Mm-hmm.
And, she's got red braids.
Mm-hmm.
She's got a little kitty cat
Right.
on her shirt.
Mhm.
She's just a child.
Just a child.
And I'm looking eye level at her, and I could see into her soul. All I could see was fear. And I made a commitment at that moment to myself, to God, to that child,
Mm-hmm.
that I would dedicate my life to eradicating that evil
Yeah.
from the face of the earth. And I took her little hands and I just said, está bien, it's okay. And the traffickers, I said, wait a minute. The agent still hadn't come yet. I said,
Yeah.
you know what? At this part, I'm nothing special, but I believe that it was divine guidance that I was there. I had negotiated hundreds of business plans.
Mm-hmm.
I said, guys, this is some sales right here. I said, you bring out that cocaine, you bring out these kids, man, I'm gonna have a good time. I'm gonna be fucked up for the next few days. You've already proven to me that you could do what you said you'd do. You showed up with 54 kids.
Mm-hmm.
I said, you take these kids back inside, you bring me a pen and paper, maybe a whole notebook. Let's do a business plan right here. I really, it was just delay.
You're just
right?
delaying, yeah.
You know,
So they had already told everything on there. It was on camera, so these guys are going to get busted.
We were just
now.
waiting for the agents to come. Later, we found out that one of the Child Protective Services lady who was really in charge missed her alarm that morning, missed the boat. Anyway, it was a disaster. But yeah, she would let him do the sting until she was there.
Oh my God. Okay. Yeah.
So, but the delay, you know, I'm not going to go into the darkness because this is dark, but the delay was the business plan from hell.
Okay.
And
so you write out this business plan,
literally
you're still
finding out
acting
where
this
they're
out.
getting the kids, where the demand is coming from, all of this stuff, all the numbers, all of this stuff. And all I'm thinking is, where are the agents?
Yeah.
And finally, when they came, you know, they arrested all of us included. The bad guys think that we got extradited to the U.S. to stand trial.
So they just like go through the door.
Yeah,
you know,
I'll show you the
arrested,
videos
blah,
of
blah,
it
blah,
later
blah.
and
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah,
They're
yeah.
freaking awesome. I mean, these guys come in with the guns everywhere, and you know, my bodyguard throws me to the ground, and we're laying there, and they're interrogating these traffickers, and they arrest all of them, take them off. They think that we got extradited to the U.S. to stand trial as well. Yeah. And then I went in to grab my bags, and the Child Protective Services people were in with the kids. Yeah. And I could hear laughter. Yeah. I could hear some singing with the kids. They were calming them down. And that, compared to the crying we heard less than an hour before, that sound of freedom was the most beautiful sound that I
So those
ever
kids
heard.
don't even really know that you were there or anything.
No, they weren't supposed to tell the kids that we were the good guys, but somebody must have said something to one of them, because that little girl, the same one he showed me in the picture, was standing in front of me. She was standing there by the door. Mm-hmm. She was crying again. Mm-hmm. She had her little friends by her. She was crying again, but she was smiling, and she started waving, and she said, "Thank you, Americans." And I started crying. I was bawling. I turned to the operator with me. I said, "Bro," I said, "I spent my whole life making money, making rich people richer. I want to make a difference. What do you need? How can I help?" And he said, "Paul," he said, "sadly, there's a lot of people out there like Jeffrey Epstein." You know, he said, "Don't take this wrong." He said, "I know you're doing good things in your life." He says, "But a lot of the guys who do shit like this are guys who dress and talk and walk and talk just like you, you know, wear these suits and these parties and whatever." And so that worked really well for a couple of years, me being in that Paul, I tell people I wasn't Paul Hutchinson, I was Paul effing Hutchinson, right? You know, but that ego energy actually worked well for a while, until I realized that my entire life was filled with that same arrogance, greed, and lust that the traffickers were. Yeah. And if I was really going to make an impactful difference, it wasn't about one more rescue mission or one more car and one more girl. It was about changing the man in the mirror. Yeah.
So as you changed the man in the mirror, what started to change outside of you?
Everything. And I'll touch on how the change happened. Some people are going to be like, "Okay, Paul, this is crazy," but I'm just going to tell you how it is.
Okay, go ahead.
So about 3 years into it, I had two of my operators, and realized we were all in the same space. You know, we were running these huge parties. We had multiple girls and lots of cars and lots of money, and we were doing cool undercover, but it was adding to our egos. Now we had the best panty dropper story on the planet, right? We're rescuing kids too, right? It was so toxic. Although we were doing so much good, it was just on both sides. And I had two of my operators call me, and they said, "Paul, do you trust us?" I said, "Yeah, I literally trust you with my life, you know, doing these missions." They said, "You need to come to this healing retreat." I said, "I don't need to heal. I'm Paul effing Hutchinson." He said, "No, you need to heal. You're on your second marriage, headed for a divorce. Your kids don't even talk to you. You think that one more big party and one more girl is going to make you happy. You've lost your relationship with your creator, God." Yeah. So I'm like, "Okay, I'll come. What's this all about?" And this, now, make sure everybody's sitting down here.
It's okay.
This doctor had identified some very effective, what I'm going to call plant medicines in helping people break down their ego, helping people with anxiety, depression, PTSD, addictions, childhood trauma. And what she was using at this time was something called psilocybin. This is in what you might call it magic mushrooms. Now, I thought, well, these things are dangerous, right? They're a Schedule I drug. They're literally, it's like cocaine. Well, the truth is, and people can do their own research on this, psilocybin is safer than table sugar
Wow.
There's
Okay.
never been a case of addiction, not
Sure.
one ever. There's never been a case of overdose, not one ever.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not a fan whatsoever of somebody going to a rave party and getting high with their friends,
sure.
right?
Yeah.
Because here's what happens. Here's the science behind it.
Mhm.
When we're little kids, our brain is in a state of neuroplasticity. We're very, very impressionable. Lots of information coming in. We can learn multiple languages all at the same time. But if something bad happens, if we're touched by our uncle, if our dad tells us we look fat in that outfit, whatever it is, it gets implanted into our subconscious mind.
Your belief systems are formed. that way.
95% of our life is run by that subconscious mind. And after that state of neuroplasticity, later it takes 21 days to create a new habit, right? And sometimes a lot longer if those things are super ingrained in our subconscious. Well, psilocybin creates a temporary state of neuroplasticity, very impressionable, meaning if you're at a rave party with your friends and there's rap music going over here and the orgy going over here and somebody yelling at their wife over here, it's dangerous because you're opening up your subconscious mind to things that aren't in alignment,
That stuff,
right?
it's not good for you.
However, if you come with a clear intention, knowing what you want, you start with breath work and meditation. You have a trained facilitator
So it's
who
a
knows how to
guided-
do
yeah.
this emotional surgery.
Yeah.
You can create 10 and 20 years worth of therapy in
Yeah.
24 hours. For me, it was the number one most transformational experience of my life.
Yeah.
It was the most beautiful, horrific experience. Horrific because I felt an emotional connection with everything. I felt in every part of my heart, every part of my being, every part of me, I felt the pain that my children felt when I cheated on their mom. Right? As if I was them. And it was so heavy. It felt like Satan was stepping on
I think
me.
it's interesting because I in my mind, I could be wrong. I guess we'll find out one day. But I feel like when we leave this life, that what you just described is what we feel. Maybe the pain that we caused other people and vice versa.
Well,
and, other
and the way I describe it too is, when we're born, we have this veil of forgetfulness. We don't remember. We don't remember being brothers. We don't remember being with God. We don't remember any of these things. And there are certain things that we can do to start thinning that veil, meaning taking away from this physical five senses to the emotional and the spiritual connection. And in the thinning of that veil, what it does is it helps us realize that in reality, we are all one, that we are all truly connected with each other, with God. God is not on some, galaxy far away, literally is connected at all times and with each other. And so that's what the medicine did for me. And I felt the pain of the family that broke up because some guy was at my party and slept with a cheerleader and his wife left him. And then I felt the ripple effect of my actions because, years later, maybe his daughter gets knocked up or his son gets on drugs or because
of that pain.
Yeah. And every word, every action. And then I also felt the joy of the children that we helped to rescue as they were reuniting with their families as if I was them. It was so transformative that my ego self that was contributing to the negativity in the world. And then this was powerful. I was talking with a facilitator. Now we're talking not a microdose. We're talking full 3 to 6 grams. You need help to go to the bathroom type thing, right? But with the right music, with the right facilitator, and I was talking to the facilitator my experience of releasing all that ego space, but I hadn't released it all because I was sitting here. It was funny, Russell Brunson, friend. He's got the Atlas the huge Atlas statues, Atlas and dropping so there was a statue of Atlas.
Okay.
And I said to the facilitator, I said, I feel a lot like Atlas. Now at the time I had 4,000 employees in my company, right? I said, I feel like Atlas. I've got the world on my shoulders, but look how strong God made me. I say that the stomach of this Atlas structure. So I says, God made me so strong I can handle the world. She kind of laughed a little bit. My ego self was still coming through. She said, Paul, she said, I honor that you're seeing some, traits in that Greek God. She said, but that, those Greek gods, they were mythological gods. She said, what about your relationship with him? And she points at this statue of Yeshua, of Jesus. And in my neuroplasticity state, I said, oh, I don't qualify for a relationship with him. And she said, well, why not? I said, well, I grew up in Utah. I said, I left the church of my youth when about 10 years ago. and I don't keep all the commandments. And so I don't think I'm worthy of that love of God and that relationship. She says, do you really think that that's true? I said, well, no, I try to do good things. I, do these rescue things. I employ a lot of people. She said, why don't you work on that relationship? So here I can barely walk. I'm trying to take the statue down. She helps me take it off the mantle, and I sit on the beanbag. And I hold that statue and just cry for the next hour, rebuilding a relationship that I had lost a long time ago. That could only happen when the veil was removed and I was in that beautiful state of connection. And that experience changed everything for me. Now, a mushroom journey isn't right for everyone.
Sure.
But I've been friends with RFK for about 10 years, and a lot of the new administration has agreed to the Trump administration, and they have agreed to decriminalize the use of psychedelics when it comes to trauma therapy. It's so important that people understand the proper use. With a trained facilitator, with breathwork, we now, people can go to liberatinghumanity.com and get information on our retreats or on the book or anything like that. But it's so important to understand the proper use. We've become trained facilitators. I myself, my wife, we have hosted and facilitated over 80 guided meditation, plant medicine journeys. Our daughter's become a shaman.
I love that. How did you win? So you won the Medal of Freedom. How did that happen?
Oh, just all of the rescue missions that I've done, I got the Medal of Freedom. I got the Ellis Island Medal of Honor Award. I got
who presents those to you? Is that like something to do with the White House, or what?
No, the Ellis Island. They shut down the Ellis Island, and they have, and this is a beautiful award that a lot of past presidents have got. They have a big ceremony and stuff, and this wasn't by the White House. The International Medal of Freedom was by an international organization. I got knighted a few times. I joke and I tell people, you can call me sir, not doctor, all this crap.
Call me sir.
I said, but my business card says Paul Hutchinson, DMA. DMA, what was that? Doctor of Medical? No, it doesn't mean anything. DMA doesn't mean anything, right?
It doesn't mean anything.
Because all that other stuff is just crap.
It is true.
It's just all titles and whatever else.
So
but
let's go back. So, we could go on for hours. How has your persuasion ability really, besides that story, how's it really helped you in this new life of rescuing children? Like, at the end of the day, like, your persuasive ability, how you've been able to influence, really has saved a lot of children. But like in other areas, how has that helped you?
Oh, in every area. Through our foundation, Child Liberation Foundation, and others that I have helped to fund and start, we have over 7,000 children that are saved. However, Tony Robbins came and saw one of the rescue missions that I had done a lot of undercover for, and he, through another foundation, and through his influence, over 70,000 children have now been rescued through his organization. But beyond that, the movie, hundreds of millions of children are safer. Over 70 million people have seen Sound of Freedom. So from an impact
it's a ripple effect.
Yeah, it's
right?
a ripple
so
effect.
Now,
it's not just
parents are a little bit more like thinking about this.
But I will say how it turned up in my personal life. You're gonna love this one.
Personal life.
So this is sales at its top. This is my mic drop, right?
Okay, I like this.
So I was in Haiti. I sadly was at a funeral for one of my undercover operators, and I met a beautiful Colombian actress. I tell people meeting a beautiful actress is kind of cool. But donating her time at an orphanage in Haiti. Now that's amazing. So I use my best sales skills in talking to this girl. Now realize this: if you've ever heard of Henry Cavill. So Henry Cavill, he's the actor who plays Superman. Yeah. The chiseled, right?
Strong guy,
He was the one who played in Batman, Superman, etc. Well, Henry was at her work almost every day for like 3 months. They started a date. Nothing big in public. It was like 2 or 3 dates, right?
Okay.
And then she met me.
Who won?
I stole Superman's girlfriend.
I love that.
Right? So, so there's my mic drop right there.
Yeah, there's the persuasive ability.
He had on her phone, his name was there as Henry Cavill, my future husband.
Oh, wow.
I changed it to Henry Cavill, the fake Superman.
Oh boy, I like that, man.
There's-
Well, Henry, there you go. See, you might be a good actor, but Paul has much better like persuasive ability and
That's right.
influence ability. I love that. How do you build trust so quickly? Let's go back to that. So you've given us a little bit of things. I could go off in some different angles. How do you build trust? How have you learned how to build trust so quickly in like really? You're talking about high stakes negotiations. Like you've built this fund, the children. Where did you learn that? It's not something anybody's born with. Where did you learn those skills?
Well, it's interesting. In Bridge, and I'm writing another book after The Sound of Freedom, one on compassionate, conscious capitalism, and I have a whole chapter on the speed of trust.
Okay.
So Stephen Covey wrote the book Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. His son, Stephen M.R. Covey, wrote the book Speed of Trust. In his seminars, back when we were building Bridge, he actually used some of what we did as an example in his Speed of Trust. We had something called the total transparency model, wherein the investors, a lot of big funds, they're super closed on all sides, and this is just a touch of things we can talk in the future on business stuff. But we opened up our investment committee meetings every single week to all of our investors. They literally could call in, see, even if crap hit the fan, we had a flood here, we had a fire here, we had a murder at this, we had 60,000 apartment units. There's definitely things going bad.
Things happen,
And us being able to handle it with full transparency.
There's a lot of trust.
Transparency is everything. And this is the whole frustration I have with the current administration. Guys, I don't care who was on the plane, who wasn't on the plane, who was at the island. I don't care. I do care transparency, right?
Yeah.
Show us who was there.
It builds trust. Like
it does.
With politics.
When you give us videos that were obviously doctored of what happened in the cell.
Yeah. It just triggers a lack of trust.
It triggers lack of trust, and so all you need, building trust, you can literally spend a lifetime building trust, and you can lose it in one conversation.
100%.
Right?
Yeah.
And so it's such a valuable tool as you're building business. And the reality is, sadly, we used that when we were rescuing the kids too.
Yeah.
Well,
we had to.
We had to. We were going in, and we had and a lot of it is understanding where their objections may come from, where their fear may come from, and just kind of handling that. We had a guy that was in Dominican Republic, and he was taking us to where they were holding some of the kids, but halfway there, that we stopped at a restaurant, and one of my guys that overheard, he says, those guys they're worried. They're worried that your security guy that's with you, because he was super chiseled, that maybe he's a Navy SEAL type of a thing, and they're worried your other guy is a cameraman. He's a big fat dude with a little camera there with a broken thing. He says he's worried that you guys are trying to do a documentary, and so I'm like, okay, now I know what the objections are. I know how to handle it. And so I didn't take them aside and fix them. I purposely grabbed a burger and a drink.
Yeah.
Pulled them to the side so I could appear as natural and chill as possible, right? Take a big bite of the burger, put my hand around him, walk away from everybody else, and said, hey, I got to tell you something. That guy with the camera over there, he's into CP, porn stuff. And, if you're okay with it at the party, he'll be doing filming. But if not, I'll make sure he leaves home.
That was smooth.
I says, and the big guy, I said, he actually works for my boss. His job is to make sure that I don't taste the candy, right? If I screw up, if I taste the candy before the party, I'm dead too, right? So so again, it was just
you're an actor or
where they
actors
were.
Always on stage in a play that never ends.
It is,
right?
and
That's
we ended up with a rescue of a whole bunch of kids.
Yeah.
So
had you not learned how to do that, those kids might not have been rescued.
Yeah. So it's the proper spin. I will say some of the
look, you're not doing it. I always say, like, to salespeople, like, is selling something you do to people, or is selling something you do for people?
Yeah.
You do it for them, because if you can't learn how to sell and communicate, well, in a sales situation, they don't buy what you're offering. That means their problems stay the same and nothing ever changes, right? But in this scenario, it's the same thing.
I do it this way. I imagine pigeons in a park, right? If I go running in there, I've got 2 loaves of bread. I'm going to feed you. I'm going to feed you. I'm going to feed you. They're
going to run,
gone, right? But I go in with the right posture, and I sit down on the bench. I pull out a little bread and I pull it out. a little bit. Pretty soon they're sitting on my lap.
Yeah, it's
right?
disarming.
Exactly.
You're disarming them.
Exactly.
Calming their
it's
nervous
the same
system.
thing that I used in building the fund. It's
Yeah.
the same thing I did with the traffickers.
You're disarming
you
the
can't run in
prospect.
there, I'm going to feed you.
Yeah, you're disarming the prospect to let their guard down. So what you did when you came in and put like, hey, that guy, he's into this, and this guy's, all you did was just arm him where his nervous system calmed down, and then he started to trust you.
Yeah.
You're disarming the prospect, quote
Yeah.
unquote. Amazing. I love that. We could go on for hours. I know you got a bunch more podcasts. Where can they find more about you? Where can they get the book? Where can they find more about what you do?
The book's
they
on
can help
Amazon.
too?
You can just type in Sound of Freedom.
Okay,
And
good.
it's on Amazon, coming out on the 29th of July. So it depends on when this drops. For me, I don't like it to be about Paul. So
Yeah.
you can't find me on Paul Hutchinson anything. I guess on LinkedIn I'm Paul Hutchinson, but it's just liberating humanity.
LiberatingHumanity.com.
Yeah, liberatinghumanity.com.
Okay.
All the social media is all Liberating Humanity.
They go to that website. What can they learn there? How can they help?
On the website, there's links to some of my trainers that taught situational awareness training, et cetera.
Okay.
A lot of the things that I teach in the book with it, that parents can use to help keep their kids safe, and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
You can get some of those tools right there on the website.
Right there.
You can also get a link to the book. You can also go and follow a link to the Child Liberation Foundation.
Okay.
So, or you can go to just childliberation.org and get involved in the fight against child trafficking there.
Okay.
And then lastly, you can click on the retreats and learn more about, self-healing tools that we have, everything from breath work to meditation to some of the retreats themselves.
Perfect. Make sure you go to those websites. We're going to put those in. We're going to put those links here in the show notes. Paul, it's a pleasure to have you on here.
Super grateful.
I'm a big fan of yours. My children have really enjoyed the movie. It kind of woke everybody up in our family, and my ex-wife and I, we share custody with our 6-year-old, and like we are very cautious about who is around them. No spitting that at anybody's house. We don't care if we know anything. Like, we're going to make sure that she's safe. And so we really appreciate you bringing awareness to the world, and you're really doing a good thing, man.
Thank you. I'll give you a signed copy so that you
love
can get before anybody else.
I would
you
love
can
that.
get some information on how to keep your kids safe.
It would be an honor. I've had a lot of cool people on this podcast, but you right here, this podcast, like, to me, like, children are, I have 5 kids, 4 older and a 6-year-old. And as you know, you would die for your kids. You would do anything for them. Yeah. And the fact that you're willing to die for kids you don't even know tells a lot about your character. So I really appreciate you.
Thank you, Jeremy. Incredibly grateful.
All right, my man. All right, everybody. Till next time, get in there, get that book. Get the awareness, even if you don't have kids, you want to learn about this stuff. You've got probably a brother or sister that has kids, or you have a family now, and this is stuff you really, really need to learn to root this stuff out. So till next time, thanks for watching.